Okay, this is Barbara's Singer 2932 in for service. A couple of things I want to note before I do my test. So the feed dog switch does work, raise and lower. The bobbin does seem to work just fine. Turning the hand wheel does spin that thread around, so we are in good shape. I think we won't have any issues getting a test out of her. Reverse. So I think I'm going to do the test and see how that goes. Okay, so this is the needle head of the machine. I went ahead and got all the dust out with the vacuum. It looked pretty good. I did clean some old grease off the needle bar, just everywhere that it slid into its housing. Was dirty, so I cleaned that off and we'll re-oil it in a second. I also cleaned off this bar that was just dirty, so I'll re-oil that inside its housing there where that rides. I'll put a little grease right there on that little two-jobby so that it rides nice and gently on there. The presser bar is actually really challenging to get at. So there it is at the back, but it's covered by the housing, the back case on that side. It's hidden by the needle bar on this side, and then it's solid in through here. So I kind of had to look up and through this little lever area in order to see, but the presser foot does look to be functioning properly, and I'll just put a little bit of oil at the top and bottom to make sure. The check spring was coated in old oil, so old grease, so I've taken most of that off. I'll probably give it one more pass just to make sure, and then I'll add a little tiny bit of grease right where the check spring slides against the plastic housing, just to make sure we can keep getting that movement. Other than that, I do want to make sure that I follow the release mechanism for reverse, which is right here. And so I will add a little bit of oil into this hinge here, and just follow it down a little bit there, a little bit on the inside of this, and then I already oiled it down in the bottom. And after that, I'll be moving on to clean up some of those gears just in the housing itself, and then I'll be done. Basic timing check. Needle comes up, needle goes down right as the hook comes in. No contact between the hook and the needle. Needle currently on a specialty stitch, but I'll switch it over in a second. Looks like we're in good shape timing wise. Switch it back over to straight stitch. Again, looks like we're good shape. Bottom of the needle, path centered in between the two hooks. No contact on either side, so it looks like we're in good shape. Okay, so I'm working on this Singer, and I've got the worm gear, or the horizontal gear. I've got this all clean of grease. That old brown chocolatey colored grease is all out of there. I also cleaned out this section here that was packed with grease for some reason. I cleaned a bunch of grease off of this screw. It was just globbed on there. I cleaned the grease off of this space here and that seam. It was just, again, globbed on. This is the feed dog assembly. So I cleaned under there as well. I'll reapply grease here and in here to get that fully coated. In addition to that, so we've got that nice and clean. I also cleaned off this screw that was covered in grease, and this section here that was covered in grease. I cleaned off the bars, which were just kind of oily and dusty, and I cleaned the metal case that was covered in this kind of, you kind of see there, this kind of white calcium deposit kind of looking stuff. I also cleaned down here, and that was really dusty and linty, and in here I took off the screws that hold the bobbin case because there was some rust that I cleaned as best as I could. Hopefully keep that from getting any rustier. I also, if we go from the top down, I cleaned a bunch of lint and debris out from back there on both sides, and I cleaned the feed dogs kind of like this to get those lumps of fluff out from between the dogs, like so. So that's everything I've done on the bottom. I will put a little bit of oil here, and then I will follow this path for the feed dogs. I'll follow that path with either grease or oil, depending on whether it is planer movement or rubbing movement. And then I will also move up into the main body of the machine. There's some cam stacks and so on down in there that I'm going to have to clean out. But the bottom here is pretty much ready to go. Okay, so final step. I cleaned this off and re-greased it, including the bar that it rests on. I made sure that that was nice and clean. I put a drop of oil in here for this guy. Cleaned all the old grease off of that worm gear there, and applied new grease to make sure that it's running nice and smooth, which it is. Excellent. I also tested all of the specialty stitches using this lever here. I applied a very, very, very small amount of grease to the step that controls the specialty stitch switch, just to keep that from wearing down too much. I applied oil on this bar. This slides with the specialty stitch selection, so I put a little grease on that line and on this bar because that's where when you rotate the stitches, it feeds into the cam stack. And so I made sure that those were oiled, and I put a small amount of grease here just to keep, again, those teeth from wearing down, but not too much because the specialty stitches aren't used all that often. And that grease is likely to get old. I did put a little bit of oil on that joint. Again, not too much, but enough because it moves. And then I went down into the machine and I made sure that the joints that bar connect to, that all of those were greased as well. So this is where that feeds down into the lower shaft, drive shaft, and then where the specialty stitches feed into the rest of the machine. So with that, I'm going to do a little bit of dusting just to make sure everything is nice and clean. I also checked over that gear back there. That is the gear that the worm shaft sits on top of, and that looks fine too. now that I've got the worm gear greased, and I've got most of the old grease off of that as well. I did apply a little bit of Blue Creeper just in case. I did forget to mention, before I put the cover back on, I did check the tension discs to make sure there was no thread or any dust or lint stuck in there, and it looked fine. I did clean this little piece of plastic to make it nice and shiny, and I removed a bunch of thread that was wrapped around the hand wheel. Again, that really helped with the movement too. To put the cover back on, I'm basically doing the reverse of how I took it off. So put this cover on, fitting it on this side over the lumps, holding it tight down so that it clips in along this edge. Then put this side panel on and the screw there. There's just screws on the back that I'll add back in there, but after I put the bottom back on, I'm going to add this cover on as well. But we're in good shape.